Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. I've got a really interesting young lady, a fascinating young lady to introduce you to tonight. I came across her, I'm not quite sure how, on Instagram. Someone recommended I check her out and check out the Instagram, not her. And I found it fascinating because it's called Shopping for Men. And I was like, I don't know what it's all about, but I want to introduce you to Stacie. She's an unabashed 43-year-old, twice divorced, single mother of an amazing 16-year-old daughter and the best black lab shelter mutt she could ever imagine. She's a pharmaceutical and medical device sales professional by day and a writer, podcaster, cooker, and baker enthusiast by night. She is a true extrovert with a passion for helping people. She has launched a podcast called Man Shopping. And it's a silly comparison between online shopping and online dating. On the Man Shopping with Stacie podcast, she shares real, transparent stories from her own personal life for all of our amusement and inspiration. We'll get practical tips and strategies and lots of laughs. Stacie, how are you? Welcome to the show.
I'm worn out, but great. How are you?
How did you, why did you, when did you, like, what goes? How did you launch this podcast and website and Instagram?
Yeah. So I tell everyone I took full advantage of extra time on my hands during COVID. I'm one of those people who's always had a lot of creative energy and not a lot of time at my disposal. And so during COVID, although I was working remotely, I found that I had this idea, to write a book. Really, is how everything started. I was dating online, and my friends were like, these stories are golden. You must do something with this. And so I thought, well, I've always wanted to write a book. I guess I'll start there. And in researching, marketing a book, I found all of this information on, it's a great idea to start a podcast, to support your book and to build an audience. And now podcasting is like my baby. Like, I think I was born to be a podcaster. I enjoy it so much. There's just so much negativity and defeatist attitudes surrounding dating after divorce in particular. And I'm here to try to, like you said, make people laugh and be relatable and just real and honest. I'm learning, and I'm sharing my learnings with others.
What do these men think about when they become the subject of one of your podcasts?
I've definitely spoken to many of the men that I've gone on dates with. I am not a man basher at all, at all. And so if anyone reads any of my Instagram posts or listens to any of my podcasts, they'll know everything's anonymous. I use nicknames for everyone. I may poke a little fun, but I poke more fun at myself than the men.
So is it like the bad stories about how dumb guys can be, or like, what is it that you're making fun of?
Yeah, not really. It's not really the dating fails as much as just the realities of what it's like to date. Stupid things that I've said, things that have caught me off guard, such as I've spoken a lot about, I started dating at 42 and I'm 43 now. And I was absolutely shocked on my very first date that I was asked, how do you feel about babies? And I'm like, or children. And I'm like, I have one. She's 15. Like, I never thought that a 45-year-old man would ask me about having babies. I thought it was obvious maybe that I probably wasn't up for that. In saying that, I totally understand people have children in their 40s. I think I was caught off guard, one, because it was a first date, two, because my brain had never gone there before. I had never thought about having another baby. So he just caught me off guard. And three, my child is in high school. So that's a real big, gap. So I talk about things like that, just things that I'm learning from. And
so one of the rules is don't ask Stacie or anyone on the first date, how do you feel about having a baby?
Actually, I give that guy a lot of credit because he's a bachelor and he's never had any children. And he didn't want me to assume that he wanted children of his own. He wanted me to know that he was happy and at peace if he had a child or if he didn't have a child of his own. So I think he wanted to kind of, you know, reach out to me in a way that I understood where he was coming from. I don't think he was really questioning me as much as he wanted to clear the air on the subject, because he has probably himself been the subject of a lot of doubt, you know, from the women that he's gone out with.
So the most important question is, did he get a second date?
We did go on a second date, but you know,
what was the question he asked on the second date?
Oh, the second date. So I call him Detective Daniel. He is not in law enforcement, but I call him Detective Daniel because he pummeled me with questions. He asked me more questions than any other man I have ever met. And I think it came from a place of real curiosity, and it was fun. And he was the first man that I had met on Bumble and interacted with. And so it was kind of a lot of, you know, self-exploration for me, because it was things I hadn't thought about in a long time. Simple questions like, you know, what's your favorite movie? I mean, I hadn't even really considered, let me think about that. I love movies, you know, to deeper questions. So one funny thing he did, and I talk about this like on the podcast and in the book, he came over to my apartment. At one point we went out on, I think, 4 dates, and he came over to my apartment, and he walked around my kitchen, and he happened to open what was my pantry. And I was just mortified because he is a huge fitness buff. And he's one of those like meal preppers who eats like ground turkey and broccoli like 5 times a week. And I've said, like, I cook a lot, I bake a lot, I love food, but I also had a kid, you know? And so there was like junk food in the pantry that he opened.
Oh, and he was disgusted.
And well, no, he didn't act like it. He just was curious, just like he was just like looking around. And I was like, in my back of my mind, though, I was like, oh my God, what is he going to think of that? I think there's like Cheetos in that pantry, you know? And he was like looking at every book on my shelf. And I'm like, oh my God, he's going to judge like my Brene Brown self-help section on my shelf or whatever. But he was just a curious guy.
We're chatting today with Stacie, who's got a podcast and an Instagram site called Man Shopping. It's a comparison of online shopping and online dating. I'm going to ask her about that and why the comparison just after a few messages. Stay with us, everyone. Welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour, Saga 960. I'm having a lot of fun tonight interviewing, not pummeling with questions, but interviewing Stacie, who runs a podcast and an Instagram account called Man Shopping. And it's a story about her online dating, and she compares online shopping to online dating. Stacie, what's the comparison between online shopping and online dating?
Yeah, so I was talking to my girlfriends whenever I got on Bumble for the first time, and I'm like, this is like man shopping. Like, I look at an image of a man and I size him up after I've already set filters, right? So like I compare like shoe shopping. If I'm on Nordstrom's website and I'm looking for a pair of heels, I'll set a filter for size 6.5. I could set a price range, a color, you know, all these different things. And on a dating site, you do the same thing. You're looking for, you know, someone with a certain level of education or in an age range or similarities with religion or whatever. Height, that's a big filter for women too. So
really, what's the filter for women? It's got to be taller.
It's easy for me. I'm 5'2". I'm not, so it doesn't. So
but do you want someone that's 6'6"?
No, it gets awkward. I've dated several men who are like in that, several, like maybe 3, who are 6'4" to 6'5", and I'm pretty tiny next to them, but I have dated some tall guys in the past. But
you wear like the 5-inch stilettos?
Always. always, because it looks ridiculous if I don't. I look basically, I mean, almost average height with very tall heels on. But yeah, that's what I think of. I'm like, I'm setting filters, I'm making snap decisions. Yes, no, off of nothing but images. A few.
I'm not expert at this, but you're like descriptions of their resume and some, so it's more than an image, is it not?
It is there. It's more than an image, but it's pretty surface level. Most people, it's like I can see their occupation. Sometimes I'll know how many children they have or the ages of their children, but not always. Some of their interests, whatever they reveal, if they're into reading books or going to concerts or if they're a golfer or whatever. But it's pretty basic and not a lot of depth. It feels pretty shallow. And quite frankly, it feels really shallow because I feel like people.
But then you're doing it. If it's shallow, why are you doing
totally doing it? It's hard to meet people organically and at my age, and I'll tell you why. But also during COVID, it was like damn near impossible to like get out and socialize and meet people that way.
That's interesting. You said you've only been doing this for a year. How did you date during COVID?
This way, through Bumble. So I started meeting. I was on Bumble.
Did you go for walks or break all the social distancing rules?
Both. And I have stories of both. So a lot of it was FaceTime dates, like
FaceTime dates.
Only a date. Yeah. So you can actually tell a lot. I mean, you just said you're animated and whatever. You can tell a lot from a person, and you can kind of feel chemistry, I think, through FaceTime. So yeah, you grab a drink, sit on your balcony, whatever, and chat. And it's definitely more telling and more natural than texting with someone. I've texted or messaged on within a dating app and thought that the man was witty and charming and intelligent, and then done a FaceTime to meet and thought, oh no, he didn't talk at all like he texted or like he messaged. He was much more, awkward, or
that's like getting the shoes to the door and you put them right back in the package and send them back.
Pretty much. Yeah, that happened several times. And I am not opposed to dating men from out of town. My priority is my daughter, and I only have a couple of years left with her before she moves. So I have no intent on I'm not going to move in with somebody or anything in the next 2 years at least. So I was dating for fun and dating to meet people and to kind of learn
for material for your podcast.
It didn't start off like that. Now it's like, oh gosh, it kind of, I worry that I get judged. I know I get judged that way now.
Do you warn potential dates? I may use material if you mess up on my podcast.
It definitely comes up on dates, but it's never a threat. In fact, I feel like, and I intend on interviewing a couple guys that I've gone out with. And I have a couple of takers, by the way, even like they'll share their image and name and everything. I think they're kind of flattered because I really developed good friendships with the men that I've gone out with, and there's really no ill will. So no harm, no foul. I mean, like it just didn't work out for certain reasons. And so
you've been doing this for a year, and it's Bumble that you use?
So I was on Bumble for 8 months and then no more. So it's all from the past. This is from like a year ago, January through April.
Why are you no longer
in 2020?
Why are you no longer on Bumble?
Okay, I will confess. I just got on Bumble 2 days ago, and I'm on incognito mode because of the podcast, because the podcast and the stuff is getting kind of popular, and I don't want a lot of people seeing me on there. So I'm under the radar. So men cannot see my profile unless I swipe on them. So I've swiped on two people, and I've chatted with them. but that's all that's happened so far. And yes, I absolutely will tell them. They'll know. I mean, I told one of them out of the gates and I haven't told the other one. Although I got to tell you, it's so easy to search people online. Kansas City, it's a major metropolitan city in Missouri, but it's small. And if you just go to LinkedIn and type in Stacie, my name is spelled just different enough, med device, pharmaceutical, I pop up right away. You Google my name and it's like, wow, it never used to be that way. So it's definitely, it will change the course of how I date for sure. It already has. I mean, I was set up by a matchmaker and the man canceled because he figured out who I was.
So you've used Bumble and you've also used a matchmaking company?
Well, yeah. So I through Instagram and Clubhouse, the Clubhouse app, if you're familiar, it's an audio app. It's a lot of creative people are on it. And I was approached by several matchmakers to join like their pool. So I haven't paid for their services, but I am in their pool of individuals that if they think a man aligns well with me or I would be a good match for one of their clients, then they'll reach out. And that happened one time in the past few months. It was probably 3 or 4 months ago. And I accepted the date just blind. I mean, I don't know who the man is. He was from Kansas City, though, and he was a business owner. I knew his basic demographics, and it was a blind date. I've never seen a picture of him or anything. And I was getting ready for the date, and it occurred to me that the matchmaker had not confirmed the date. And I was like, that's unusual. And so I reached out to her and she said, oh, I have to apologize. He actually just canceled. And my first thought was, oh my God, it's the podcast. This is going to start happening because I've only done the podcast for 3 months. This was at the beginning. And so she said that he would be talking to her the next day to kind of go over why or whatever. And he didn't give a reason. And so I said, well, when you find out, will you please let me know? And of course she did not let me know. And so about a week later, I said, I'm just really curious. Did you find out like the reason why he canceled? And she told me indeed it was that he saw that I had the podcast. And I said, thank you. I appreciate you telling me. He's definitely not my guy.
If he's not scared. So you've told us about the guy that asked you if you wanted kids. What are some other of your famous stories?
Oh gosh, there's so many. I had a guy forget his wallet. That was kind of funny.
A good way to get you to contribute to the payment.
I mean, I don't really think he was being conniving, but I can be a little naive. He gave me a heads up before we went. He said he had been searching for it and couldn't find it. And so I'm the one who told him, I got it. No worries. Like we're still going. So I was ready.
What are the rules? I saw someone post something that said, you ask me, you pay. I ask you, I pay. Is that the rule?
I like to say that there are no dating rules and I like to break dating rules, especially when it comes to communication. With the bill, in the back of my mind, I always offer to split the tab or, whatever on a date. I really appreciate it and like the chivalry of a man. If he's asked me to happy hour, to dinner, to coffee, I always appreciate it on a first date if he insists on paying. It sets a nice tone, I think.
You appreciate it. Why? Because he's being a gentleman or because it's the right thing to
because
do,
typically it kind of does feel like if he pursued me and asked me out and invited me and chose the place and all of that, it feels appropriate. But yeah, I do kind of just like that it just feels like a little bit more like he's pursuing me if he wants to pay for it on his own.
Now, why Bumble, not Tinder or some other?
Great question.
Match.com or whatever the other ones are.
Great question. I advise women to do Bumble because on Bumble, the woman is in charge. And what that means to me, now I'm on incognito mode, but if I were just out there on Bumble, men cannot communicate with you until you match and until you match as a pair. And it is up to the woman to send the first message. So what that means to a woman is that her phone doesn't blow up with unsolicited messages. On every other dating app, and I'm not familiar because I haven't used them, but I know through friends and I've seen enough to know your phone goes haywire when you're on those because anyone and everyone can message you. And I have been divorced twice. I talk about it very frankly on the episode. I was married to my daughter's dad young, and we were married for just over 6 years. And after we divorced, I dated and I got on Match.com. And I stayed on Match.com for about 3 days because of my phone. And I was 30 years old. So there were a lot of 30 whatever year olds on Match.com. I don't know if my phone would be as busy now, but it felt very overwhelming. And online dating can be very overwhelming. A lot of people use multiple apps all at the same time. And I can't imagine keeping up with all of that.
And then did you find your second husband through Match.com?
I did. And I was super strategic. I had a plan. I got on Match.com with creating a very basic profile. I don't think I didn't upload a photo. I just kind of scoured the men and I found like 3 men that I thought I was interested in. And so like late at night, I hopped on, I added my photos, added really descriptive, true, honest, transparent things about myself. And I sent messages to the 3 or 4 men that I had already predetermined who they would be. And then I hopped right back off once I matched with them. And I only communicated with them. That was my strategy. And my ex-husband, my second husband, who I was married to with for about 8 years, was one of them.
And how did you decide between the 4?
I actually went on a coffee date with a man first, the quickest, I guess. I was up for going out with all of them. And so I went on a coffee date with one man, and then I invited him to an event and he canceled about 45 minutes before the event, said that he fell ill. And I basically told him I would not be seeing him anymore. And
because he canceled once.
Yeah,
maybe he was really ill.
I didn't have a good feeling about it. And guess what? I was right. He pursued me for months after that. And he confessed early on that he had actually been in a relationship with someone for a few months when we met and went on our coffee date. And that's why he had canceled. There must have been some indicator. I don't think I could have just known, but I had some intuitive thing going on. And he confessed that he'd been in a relationship, but he was, so whatever, taken with me that he had to like see it through. And then he felt bad. And so he canceled. And then, now of course they weren't together anymore and whatever. And so I feel like I kind of dodged something with him.
So that's 1 down, 3 to go.
Yeah. So there was one more that I should have met and didn't. And like the timing of just meeting.
Why should you have met him? Because he was.
I think he was pretty great.
He was a good prospect?
Yeah, I think so. And my ex-husband actually came to. I had on Sex and the City. The girls had I think they called it like a trash or treasure party, but essentially they threw a party in an apartment. And the concept was everyone had to be single. And their concept was to bring or invite people who you had dated, but you like it didn't work out. So it was supposed to be like all of your rejects and all of their friends and whatever. So what I did was I had an anti-Valentine's Day party on February 13th. And I invited every single person that I knew in Kansas City, I was like 32 maybe. So ages like late 20s through like mid 50s, every occupation, race, men and women. It was fantastic. It's the favorite party of mine that I've ever had. And I invited 2 of the guys from Match. I invited the one that ended up being my husband and another guy who couldn't make it. And my ex-husband and I totally hit it off. And I stupidly told him a few days into dating him that I had a date set up with another guy. And I'm sure I did that because I wanted him to say, don't go, which he did. And so we decided right out of the gates very quickly that we were not going to date other people. And I think that was a miss. I mean, my friends were all like, you have to see it through. Like, you've only been dating for, because I had a boyfriend before that for a long time after my divorce. And they're like, you need to date. Like, don't just settle or don't just go with this first guy. And that's exactly what I did. And that was actually really good advice from my friends. That's the advice I would give to women now.
Is to date a whole bunch of different people and check them out. Play the field.
I think it's important to learn what you're looking for. And especially soon after a divorce, I think it's important to give yourself some time to really know who you are.
What if you find someone special, but they want to get exclusive and commit earlier than you want?
I mean, if you're ready for it, like, I would condone it if the person feels healed, healthy, able to contribute. But I don't know. I'm 2 years out from my second divorce. Oh my Lord, have I come a long way. I mean, I look back on things that I thought and said and did. The book and the podcast are the best forms of self-discovery I could ever imagine, because in retelling my stories, it's so educational, not just for the listener, but for me. I'm like, why did I do that?
Do you tell the story of the divorce or just of the dates?
I have told stories of my divorce. I kind of set it up in my very first episode of Man Shopping with Stacie. It's episode 1. What the hell is man shopping? And I describe the similarities between online shopping and online dating. And I also want to get to know, I want people to get to know where I'm coming from. A lot of my point in sharing my divorce stories is, if I can come out of 2 really traumatic, tumultuous, difficult relationships and divorces and be happy and be optimistic, other people can too. I had some pretty abusive stuff going on in my marriages. And so it's taken a lot of time and a lot of work, I listened to a lot of podcasts. I've read a lot of books. I've done the therapy stuff. And now I'm pretty much just floating around in life trying to learn from myself and others. But I'm at that point, thankfully. I don't have regrets. I talk about everything very openly. I want to help people. So I have been the guest of a couple of podcasts. Divorced the First 6 Months with Peter Maestri. I am so grateful to him for interviewing me, because it was absolutely cathartic. It felt like a therapy session. Peter asks very few questions, and you can tell I can talk. So I just poured out everything that happened in my second marriage, and didn't really expect to say some of the things that I said, but I was like, it's all like, it feels really good, because it was stories like what I told that helped me understand what was going on in my marriage and helped me to leave. And, I'm grateful to the podcasters who helped me. And so I hope that, for many years to come, people can hear that message and the story I told, and that it helps other people too.
Stacie, if people want to check out your podcast, how do they do that?
Yeah, it's everywhere. Search Man Shopping with Stacie, Stacie, Apple, Spotify, Pandora. I have a website, Instagram. It's everywhere you can listen to a podcast.
We're chatting with Stacie tonight about man shopping, which is comparable, she says, to online shopping. We're going to take a break for some messages and come back more with Stacie. And I'm going to ask her a little bit about the trauma and the traumatic experiences she went through. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour, Saga 960. So I'm having an education tonight on online dating, or at least the trials and tribulations of online dating with Stacie Wimer, who is runs an Instagram site and a podcast called Shopping for Men, and it's all about comparing online dating with online shopping, and it sounds kind of interesting. So Stacie, you said that there was a lot of abuse in your relationship and trauma that you had to get over in both of your marriages. Can you share any of that with us?
Yeah, absolutely. I share these stories largely because I want to help other men and women like me who are in unhealthy marriages. So in my first marriage with my daughter's dad, as I told you earlier, we were young. We were intense and our courtship was really fast. We fell hard and heavy, and I missed a lot of flags that I think as I've gotten older, I think I would have caught on to. He didn't have good relationships with his siblings, didn't have a lot of friends. He kind of isolated himself. And as I discovered in dating him later and in conversations with some of his family members, they're like, well, he's hot-headed. He has a temper. And I'm like, I've never seen that, surely that could never turn on me because, he loves me and adores me so much. But back then he had a tremendous temper. And I found myself, we were married within a year and I was 23 years old. And I found myself married to, I called him a jerk. I'm like, I'm kind, I'm nice. I thought you were too. How did I end up with a jerk, And, he did things like road rage. He was very much, I lived on like walking on eggshells. So he would, we would argue. And of course, I had done something wrong. And so I learned defense mechanisms. I was scared that it would get physically violent whenever he would be angry with me. And I'm a very strong person. I have a high self-esteem, but I found myself being like behaving like a battered woman. I developed, I felt as though I kept it all a secret. I didn't tell anyone about our marital problems. I really took my marital vows and I thought I was just obligated, to make this marriage work, especially after we had my daughter. And I nearly left a few times. I had written notes. I had one foot out the door. But again, I kept everything a secret. I kept everything between the two of us. No one knew that we didn't get along well, because it would be like this. One evening, we would have an argument. He had a tactic of keeping me up all night long in fights. And I would just cry and apologize for things I didn't do. And then the next day, he would say, you are the most beautiful, best mother, most intelligent woman I've ever met in my life. And I would rather live in a cardboard box on the street than not be with you. I mean, these were very big extremes. So
was he bipolar?
I have diagnosed him as that, but he has never been clinically diagnosed. So that's how
how'd you finally leave?
I felt like I had a moral and I guess religious reason, like that was acceptable. He had an ongoing emotional affair. I don't know if it was ever physical, but I know it existed throughout our marriage. I read emails. There were phone calls. I never left. I confronted him about it and stayed with him. For years. I mean, even when I was pregnant, I read emails between him and her and never left. And then one night he was out of town and our landline had a ring at like 10 p.m. on a Friday. And it was, you tell your husband to stay away from my wife and my kids. And I knew exactly who it was. I said, oh, you're the husband. Okay. Could we talk? And he did. He stayed on the phone with me and told me what he knew. And I told him what I knew. And that's when I decided that it was time to get a divorce.
Oh
But
my
that's what it
God.
took. I mean, it took years and years of going through so many hard things because I did love him. Um,
How
about
could you,
50. Mhm.
how could you love him through all that?
I don't know. I don't know.
Did
I
you just
mean,
want to have a successful marriage? Was it
I
just
think
society
so.
or religion that had,
Yes, all of it. I say this a lot and I hate that it sounds kind of like an excuse, but I was raised in a small little country Baptist church. And where I came from, there wasn't a lot of divorce and there was a lot of feeling in, I felt as though um, I single handedly could keep the marriage together, regardless of what he was doing or whatever. And I didn't understand until after that marriage ended that, God wouldn't want me to be abused for 7 years. That's not how things work. So it was rough. I
sounds
mean,
like you rushed into the marriage when you
I
were too,
did.
and you didn't study him enough and know him enough, know him well enough. Did you make the same mistake the second time?
Yes. Yes, I did.
Why?
Um,
Why didn't you learn from your first mistake?
I don't know. I think, I think I know a few reasons. I I went from that marriage into another relationship pretty quickly, and I probably would have married him if he would have asked me. I mean, I wanted a family. I wanted a husband. I wanted I wanted more children. I wanted a stepdad for my daughter. I did not want to be alone. I was basically a hot mess. I was not in a good place. And I recognize it now, but I was in a big hurry to have a do-over. I wanted my family that I didn't get the first time around. And I didn't do anything. I mean, I didn't even really fully understand what I had just been through. Um, yeah, I didn't take the time at all. And I fell for a very similar personality type. Both of the men that I married could be called enigmas. They're like mysterious. I didn't really understand them. And for some reason, I was attracted to that. I can't put my finger on it. I'm very acutely aware
what do you mean
now.
enigma? So that there's this line about girls always want the bad guys. Are they the bad guys, or
No, I
what do
don't
you
think
mean
they're
by
the bad guys. They're like hard to read, weird, quirky, just different. I don't know, just like a little mysterious. Like, I think it's honestly because they were unhealthy. I don't think that it was because they were so cool or something. Like, I don't know. I understand a lot of the reasons I was attracted to both men and why things unfolded the way that they did. My second husband struggles with an addiction to alcohol. Now, in
did
my
you, did you know
what?
that? Did you know
No,
that?
no. I thought he was ill. I knew that he had a physical something was happening with him early in our basically in our marriage. And really the few months leading up to the marriage, I sent him to a doctor. I thought he had MS or Parkinson's or something neurologically wrong with him. He hid his alcohol addiction like you wouldn't believe. He's happy, even tempered, didn't slur, didn't seem inebriated or incapacitated ever. I couldn't tell. I mean, I would drink wine with him at night, and he was drinking in excess in addition to that. And I had no idea, had no idea.
And so if he was happy and all this,
Mhm.
what was traumatic?
He had his second DUI 1 month after we got married. That was very traumatic. He lost his job. He was in a company vehicle. And I had that same kind of decision to make. Do I stay with him through this? Now I get it. I know what's happening now. There's no hiding it. Um, or do I stand by him and try to help him? And that's what I chose to do. And again, I kept all of it a secret. My parents, my friends, my parents didn't know that this had even happened for like maybe 10 months. I broke down at some point because he was unemployed for almost a year and I was carrying us financially, emotionally, like physically in every way possible. And I broke down at some point. I remember I was in an airport, so I must have been traveling for work. And he finally said, I'm going to call your parents and tell them what's happened. And I was like, thank you. And so once they knew, that helped, because then I had the support I needed. His parents knew out of the gates because we told them together. I think the only reason we told them was because he thought that they could help him with his career.
Right.
He thought that their connections could help with that, and it didn't.
Did he become abusive as well?
Yeah, he's crafty though. He's subtly abusive. He's more of a personality disorder, like low grade narcissist. Like he's not above and beyond, but he has his first marriage was to a woman. If we're going to talk about like narcissist extremes, like he was somewhere a little above normal. Like we all are on this spectrum somewhere, with an ego and whatever. This woman was like off the charts, had no regard for her own children's feelings, put herself above everyone. And at some point after meeting me, decided that her main objective in life was to disrupt my family every day in any way that she could. So what he would do is support her, basically.
So is that why you left him in the end?
In the end, it had a big piece of it. But no, I left him because the addiction to alcohol had reared its ugly head again. It was very cyclical. He would be healthy and do well for long periods of time and then have setbacks. And his last setback in our marriage involved driving our children under the influence. I caught him 2 or 3 times and I just said, I'm not doing it anymore. And I took my daughter and we left within 3 months. I mean, I wanted him to get therapy. And so I offered resources and help and tried to work through things with him for a matter of time and gave him what I felt like was enough opportunity. And during that time, he didn't know if he was attracted to me, didn't know if he was in love with me anymore. And he offered no change. He said that he was going to quit drinking on his own and that he had it all under control. So he literally gave me nothing to work with. And so my daughter and I moved out and my life has been peaceful and happy.
Until you started dating on Bumble.
No,
and
that's
then you
okay.
added some excitement to it. But seriously, what you said was that you've gone through a metamorphosis. You've gone through a learning process in the last couple of years since your divorce. How many years has it been?
It's the divorce. It'll be 2 years in February, but we moved out. It's been over 2 years that my daughter and I have been living alone.
And so how did you go through that? You said you listened to a lot of podcasts, you went to some therapy and you did a lot of thinking and writing your own book was helpful. So it's been a journey of self-discovery. And what have you learned?
Big time. I tell people now that I'm so happy living this life with my daughter. And I'm so consumed with our future and things that I want, goals that I want for myself, that the man that I meet, that we choose to have a relationship together, he's going to have to be so awesome to like add to my life of what I have going on over here by myself. I've never been at that point. I've always sought out a partner because almost out of need, like I need to be with somebody. I want to be with someone every day. And now I'm like, I'm so happy right where I'm at. I love the idea of falling in love again someday. I absolutely will take my time and be cautious and all of those things that I've learned.
Is that attitude going to change once your daughter goes off to university?
I kind of stress about that sometimes because I don't feel alone yet. because I have my daughter at home. Now, I will say she started driving, she nannied all summer, and she has friends, and like life has changed a lot since she started, having her own car. But I do wonder that if I'll feel more lonely or my priority of dating will be higher after she leaves. I don't know.
We're chatting today with Stacie Wimer, who runs a website, a podcast, a Instagram about shopping for men. And she has been shopping for men on online, and she compares it to online shopping for clothes and other things. Fascinating conversation. We're going to take a break and come back with some concluding comments in just a minute. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. We're chatting with Stacie Wimer, who's got a podcast and an Instagram, Man Shopping with Stacie, that is, I don't know how I ran across it, but it's absolutely fascinating. She compares online dating with online shopping. So you've got this Bumble account. And there's one very important thing that, if not the listeners want to know, I want to know. What's the age range?
Oh, my age range. So I have it set. I'm 43 and I have it set, I believe, 39 to 49. Pretty tight. It's pretty tight. Yeah.
So I miss out. Tough luck to Brian. And what about the height range?
I think I have it set at like 5'9" to like 6'4".
Okay. Check on that one. And education. What are you looking for in education?
I said it for like bachelor's degree or whatever, but I think I also said like, if the other criteria matches, I don't care, because I think that there are a lot of entrepreneurial people who may not.
So a really intelligent guy you don't care about.
Oh, I mean, I value that for sure. I'm always impressed by that. Yeah.
Okay. And so what are the other top criteria?
I think it's kind of,
Yeah, I love a good sense of humor. I love it. I love laughing. I mean, everybody does. Everybody likes to be around dynamic, charismatic people. I'm very outgoing, so I like that good positive energy. That's a big thing for me. And focus on family. Something else I've learned after divorce that I really sacrificed holidays and events sometimes with my own family, because my blended family was so off the charts busy and overscheduled that I really missed out on some things. And that's been one of the greatest gifts for my daughter and I, is really being present and rebuilding really tight, great relationships with all of the people we love. It's been wonderful.
So guys want to know, based on your experience and that you're writing this podcast and you're probably getting lots of suggestions from people, what are your suggestions for us? If some guy's gone through a divorce and thinks about dating again, what do you tell him?
Well, I think specifically like with an online profile, some of the things that men may not think about that I definitely notice. I mean, photos are kind of key because it's that kind of insight into who you are, but only if they're not all selfies. Nothing irritates me more than if the man's pictures are all just selfies, because I like to see how he lives his life. So in that being said, I think it's really helpful to see photos of, like, if you like hiking and being in the mountains, then I hope one of your photos is of a beautiful, you on a mountaintop somewhere. If you like to play golf, I hope there's a picture of you with some golf buddies. I love to see the kids' pictures. You can black them out if you don't want people to see their faces, but showing like a well-rounded life, because sometimes after divorce, people seclude, and kind of like pull away from family and friends and live this loner solo life. And it looks really sad on a dating profile if there's not some sort of social activity or family activity or whatever. I think that's my biggest advice.
Okay. So some social activity or family activity. What else?
I think that being pretty clear in where you're at in your dating life is important. There's like a check the box. Are you looking for something casual, which, gets kind of relayed as like hooking up, or are you just don't know yet, or you're looking for a relationship. So it's helpful, at least in conversation early on, to kind of own where you're at in the journey, because anyone who's been divorced or single for a while understands that there's kind of a progression. It makes no sense to me if you're separated to put down, I'm looking for a relationship. Wow, that's scary. Like, don't do that.
Don't do it. So what's the future for you? You've been divorced 2 years, separated 2 years. You said that the first 2 times you went too quick. Now you're studying it intensely and writing a book about it and podcasts about it. Are you a man hater? Do you want a relationship again? Do you think you're going to be married a third time?
The marriage question, I don't know. I hope to fall in love again. I hope to have a life partner again. I'm very optimistic about that. In addition to like writing a book based on 8 months of Bumble, I've also I have a podcast titled Dry Spell. I went through about 9 months of really not dating at all. And that was a game changer.
In a good way or a bad way?
Good way. Really, really healthy, good way. So at first it wasn't on purpose. I just wasn't dating anybody, like nobody was really in the picture. I hadn't been online for months. And then I got really, really passionate about starting my podcast. And I took it very seriously. I'm not one of those people who just like bought a microphone, recorded, and then was like, hey, everybody, I got a podcast now. I marketed it a lot. I did like 9 launch parties. I worked really hard. And put in a lot of time and loved every minute of it.
You did one post when you were thanking people for encouragement. Tell me a little bit about the message you were trying to get across here.
Yeah. So it's important to me that people are heard. Like, I feel like I'm the voice of a lot of men and women now. I'm telling the stories that everyone else has. Nothing about me is that unique or unusual, but I'm finding it definitely strikes a chord with men and women because I'm so vocal and talk about things that relate to all of us out here as singles. So it's just really important to me to let my encouragers and my supporters know how much it means to me, because I get a tremendous amount. I'm fortunate, and I know you do too, of messages and emails and phone calls and texts from people I'm close with, thanking me and telling me specifically, what it was about the episode that, oh my gosh, I was crying on my way home, and then I was laughing. And I remember when this happened, and it is what motivates me and keeps me going.
Tell us again where people can find you.
Yeah. So Man Shopping with Stacie, Stacie, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and literally anywhere you can listen to a podcast. And my website, manshoppingwithstacie.com. And of course, my Instagram account as well. My name is Stacie Wimer. So that is Wimer on Instagram.
Stacie Wimer, Man Shopping. Thank you so much for joining us and telling us a little bit about your story. It sounds like you've had some ups and some downs, but the ups right now are far outweighing the downs. And so all the best with your online dating and your online shopping. And thank you for joining us. That's our show for tonight, everyone. I remind you, I come to you every Monday through Friday at 6 o'clock on 960 AM, or you can stream me online from even Kansas City at www.saga960am.ca for Canada.com. You can get all my video casts on YouTube, briancrombie.com, and all my podcasts on lots of the same places, Stacie: Apple Podcast, Audible, Speakeasy, etc. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Good night.